Okay, after finishing these two pieces, there's just one this 6 by 6 piece that is remaining. And this is going to be the last one. And then after that, we're going to create these protectors and these railing fences as well. So as you're looking at this, suppose that we were only going to sculpt these as individual pieces and unique pieces inside ZBrush. And you can imagine how much sculpting we had to do. And you can count that for this one, we would have been forced to sculpt something like 20 pieces to get this done. But you see, only using this blacksmith mentality in here that we used, we are able to create kits, smaller kits to form bigger objects. And that works really fine and cuts a lot of the production time in half, and more than half. It's really nothing compared to if we wanted to make these unique and every sculpted detail in ZBrush. So let's go and start to create this. And for this one also, I'm going to go in here. Let's see what we have. I'm going to select these pieces on top using this, and select the remaining ones and delete them. And let's take these ones instead and bring them up just a bit. So this is okay. And now let's turn this one into a wireframe and make it non-selectable. Or before that, let's select these as well and isolate them. Okay, and now let's make this non-selectable and start the kit bashing process. And this one is bigger a bit and we have some more work to do, but it's nothing. The whole thing is the same thing as we did for the previous ones. We are going to only start hand placing details in here and then a bit of rotation and things like that remaining. And as you know, I'm not really concerning about the height and how it fills the space in here. I'm only going to fill the space in X and Y. I mean in here and here, and then caring about the height. So let's take these ones and I'm only going to duplicate these around and use the move, rotation and a scale to make this right. So let's take this and bring it here. And now I'm not really caring about how they are going to be placed. I'm going to just roughly place them in here and then later on I will make them better in terms of rotation and scaling and anything. Now I'm basically doing the test to see if everything is working all right. So bring this one in here as well. And now in here I can take this and rotate it in 180 degrees to make it right. And I can rotate it, for example, to fill the space even more. And it's good to leave some empty spaces in here to make sure that they stay unique instead of, for example, these going into each other. So let's take this and bring it in here and be sure that you do not go beyond the borders at all. So this is about this. Let's use the existing kits to make this right as well. Or I can duplicate this in this direction, rotate in this direction and try to place it in here, and it perfectly matches the curvature in here. Happy accidents. Okay, this is about it. And I'm going to place a horizontal one in here instead of all of these vertical ones. And because this one and this one are the same, I'm going to rotate this to make it identical. And we can also take advantage of these pieces as well to make this. And let's take this one also and bring it in here. And it makes a perfect piece. Or let's rotate it a bit to get something different. It's alright, okay. And now let's take this one again and copy it, and because it goes out of the borders I need to scale this. And whenever you are scaling these pieces, try to scale them in all directions instead of, for example, scaling in one direction like this. It makes a bit of texture stretching later on. So it's all about creating these using Lego pieces, and you should think these as Lego pieces as you are creating them. It's no different than Lego pieces. It's really the same thing, but a bit more complex. So let's take this one, bring it over just a bit to make these two fit in here. Okay, let's give this a bit of rotation. It looks like this is doing good. And I'm using bigger pieces to make this alright because it's a 6x6 piece and gets a bit of more time to create. So, and if you start to use these bigger pieces, you will finish it sooner. And as I said, later on, we will bring this into Substance, but before that, create second UV layout for these, and then use that to do a lot of damage and grime stuff and make these go into the next level in terms of reality. So bear with me so that later on we have a bit of work to do with these. And how much could we create? We need to create the second UVs for them as well if you want to detail them out even more. So I can take this and scale it in this direction just a bit. Not so much to cause a lot of texture distortion, just a bit. So let me see what we are doing here. I need to bring this one in here as well. And the more you go into the process, the more professional you become in terms of creating kits. You only need to have a bit of planning first, decide on what you want to create, and later on go and execute the plan. Right on this, we spent a bit of time planning and to see what we're going to create, and later on we brought this kit into ZBrush, detailed them, and now we're using that blacksmith mentality that I told you and creating a dock only using this amount of planks. And every time we're getting different planks because we have made them in a way that every time we rotate these we're getting variations. And if you do the planning right, you will make perfect things. You just need to be cautious about the planning. Really powerful. And for this project, I spent some days planning, and without creating anything, I just started to planning to figure out what we are going to create. And I'm really with the time that I put into the planning. So as I'm looking at this, I feel this one is a bit too curvy. Let me see if I can solve it using rotating it in some degrees, or yeah, I can bring these ones out in this direction, and then I can take this piece and bring it in here and rotate it and scale it to fill this space. Something like this, and it's good for my taste now. So let's take this and scale it just a bit, not to have a lot of texture distortion, and this is coming along together so well. So this one in here also, it's doing a good job. You see, it matches the curvature very fine. And now let's take one of these, for example this one, and try to fit it right in here. Just need to make it a bit smaller, and there we go. And just a bit of more spacing to fill in. So these two are identical. I need to rotate this one to get a new one instantly. So let's rotate it in this direction as well. It looks like I need to invert it in this direction. And now let's look at it. Now we're getting perfectly new thing. So only some more to fill in. Okay, this is going to be all right. Let's leave a bit of a spacing in here, and then a bit more. And for this piece, I'm going to use one of these, for example, this one, and bring it, scale it, and fit it into the view. And rotate it to match the curvature, something like this. There's a bit of a spacing in here, which I can fix by rotating in Y. Okay, this is doing a lot better. So scale this. And only some more objects we need to place to fill in. So take this one, rotate it 180 degrees. And place it in here. Rotate it freely just a bit. And we need to place this one in here to fill the gap also. Matching the curvature very good. So some more remaining. Let's take this. And we can bring it here, scale it, and use it to fill this space in here. And we need to rotate this and invert it in this direction to make a new one. So we are done, basically only a bit more to do. So let's take this one, I need to rotate it, scale it just a bit, but not too much to get a lot of texture distortion. So let's scale it to fill this space in. Okay, this is done. Only some little pieces like this to fill these spaces, and I can really resize this without any problem. And I feel like the polygons on this could have exceeded something like 2 million polygons, or yeah, the polygon count in here is indicating that we are reaching 2 million polygons. And that is not a problem because Nanite can really stand this amount of polygon. So this is it. Let's look at it. And I can take this and rescale it. And make it something like this. And on this one, I can scale it in here also. So this is about the 6x6 piece. Now what we're going to do is taking all of them, bringing them up so that they match the curvature. So let's look at them in every direction. And I need to select these and bring these up as well. Deselect this one. And you see in every direction we're getting height variations, which is good. And now, because these are up and higher than the ground level, we need to place those frames to make a frame for this one. So let's bring it here, and we're not being really cautious about this one because this is going to be hidden underneath, only to add a bit of a layer of new depth into the scene. So let's drag this one out and then select these two underneath ones, duplicate them and rotate them 90 degrees to make the frame for it as well. And the scene is becoming a bit heavy because it's going to have a lot of polygons. Not a problem really. So let's select all of them. I mean all, and let's select this one as the last one and join them together so that it becomes only a single piece. And let's isolate it, and it's 1.5 million polygons in here. Totally manageable for Nanite. So let's select this one and make it selectable. Again, I'm going to use this to drive the pivot on this one. So let me drag this over so that you see how the pivot system does. First, if you always try to bring something in Blender, it's going to center it on this cursor, and this cursor by default is in the center of the world, so that when you create something, it brings the object that you create in the center of the world. So we are selecting this one to offset this center of the world into here by going into here and using this that indicates this one and bring this into selected. Now the center of the world is here, so that we are going to offset the pivot of this one to the center of the world, which we have offset to here. So let's hit here, and we are going to bring the pivot to cursor. And now it has placed the pivot on this here as well. We have offset it and basically cheating on Blender to tell that to offset the pivot in here. So let's hit Shift and S again. Of course, this Shift and S comes from the Machine Tools add-on. If you have not installed it, I really encourage you to install it, and the instruction on how to install it is in previous chapters. So you bring the center to origin, and now it has become the origin into the center of the world in z in 0 0 0 in x, y, and z. So now if we try to undo the transformation, it becomes and brings the mesh in here. So let's inspect the mesh to see if there's any problem. No. And take this one and need the name of this one, and let's delete it. And I'm going to rename this one to that piece and export it. Okay, done exporting the mesh, and now what we're going to do is bringing this into Unreal. Of course, it's in Unreal, we need to re-import the mesh. And before that, let's find the piece in here and go and convert it into nanite. It's taking a bit of time, not so much really because this one is a cheap one, and right click and re-import. Okay, done. And now you see it has added a lot to the port. And if it's a bit repetitive, there's not a problem. We can, because this one is a square piece, we can rotate it in all directions and copy it and make a new thing with it. Not a problem really. But we need to first take care of the remaining pieces like these protectors and these fences, and then later on we come in here and start to rotate and hand place all of things. And I can safely tell that the hard thing about this dock creation were these plank pieces. They needed a lot of manipulation to do, and it's done basically. And now these ones are really easy to create because this is only a 4-piece and not really hard to create. The hard thing were these planks, which we needed to cover a lot of ground in it, and it's done. And now we are ready to create the protectors and these fences. So see you in Blender. Okay, let's drag this out and bring it here. Later on we may create some variations for these as well. So let's go and create this. Let me see how many kits we need to create. 1, 2, and 3 basically. So let's go and start with this one. And for these ones mostly we're going to be using these bark pieces instead of these plank pieces that we have here. So let me take these, and first I need to take these ones and alter the rotation to 90 degrees and then bring them in here. So let's select this and these ones as well, and then again I'm going to make this wireframe and unselectable. So let's go. And it's basically the same thing. We're going to place these planks in these places to make it look natural. That's all. And because these planks are really natural, they will fit together perfectly. So let's look at it. There's just a bit of a spacing remaining, and now what we're going to do is taking these and just we need to rotate them to get new variations because these are many-sided and taking the rotation from them isn't really a problem. And because these are not going to be seen very much, we are not going to be so careful about the placement. So I can safely delete this one and bring this in here. And there's a good mode in here which is using individual pivot points, which you can select from here. And this is to tell Blender how to use the origins or pivot points. I'm going to select the individual origins, and if I try to rotate this, it tries to rotate every object based on its original pivot instead of using all of them to, for example, like this. By default, if I try to rotate them by default, it's on bounding box center, and it means that every time I try to rotate, it's trying to rotate around the center, which is really not what I want. So I go in here and select the individual origins, and it tries to rotate every object based on its own origin. So let's rotate, and now you see every object is spinning around itself. A good way of adding randomness to the kits. So I'm gonna bring this one back a bit and alter these, and I'm gonna select them and only bring these in here, and also using individual origins try to give them a bit of rotation, random rotation. And in here as well I'm going to rotate them, and I can take these and rotate them upside down to create new variation, and bring them up just a bit. And in here I need to place a bigger object, and this is a major piece. Let's select this one, for example, and bring it here. I believe it's too big. I need to bring this down. Not a huge problem. I can scale it down just a bit to fit what I need and bring it up. Okay, and now I need to place this here as well. And you see how easy it's creating these kits compared to those plank ones, because these are not going to be so carefully placed and not going to be seen by the player either. So we're going to be a lot faster on these. So let's take these and bring these down. And only a bit hand placing in here is needed. Just a bit, not so much. And also we're going to cover these gaps using horizontal pieces that we add. So let's select these and bring it in here in the center and start to place it horizontally. Okay, this is how we do it. To add horizontal planks to hold these down together and give it directions. And we can also use the same planks in here as well. So we need to duplicate them, rotate them 90 degrees. And now I need to make this bounding box center. And what we're going to do is only fit this into the borders and not going too overboard with it. For example, something like this. And let's bring this out and make it big in these directions. And that is not a problem really, because it's not going to be seen by the player. We're going to only create the illusion of it, not real thing. So let's select these, or I'm going to place this here so that they're not in the view, and take some of them, duplicate, bring it in here, and make this big in this direction. So I believe these are identical. Okay, and now let's select some of more and start rotating and duplicating them around. So this one is a new one, and we need to make this bigger in these directions. So let's take these, let's make it a bit thinner. So I'm going to take this and bring them down and displace them some to create new variations. For example, rotating this, bringing this up, rotate in another direction, give it offset in rotation, and basically do whatever you do to hide the repetition. And also using this one, and these are going to be basically under the water, but we are going to create them just in case something we need to do. So this is good. And now let's select these horizontal ones, and we need to place them on the other side as well. It's only a matter of duplicating, bringing them over, and displacing them a bit to fit the curvature in here. So rotate to get a new variation. Okay, you see they are different now. And check to see if they fit in here. Yeah, they fit perfectly. And now we need to find this and make it selectable to delete it. It's this one. Let's pick up the name and then isolate these, select them all but this one. So let's select them all and deselect this and join them together using Control and J, and now these are single identities. And before that I need to do something more, and that is bringing this down to make the base look a bit stronger. So let's deselect this one. I believe I have copied this. I don't need it. I just need to select these two and bring them down to make it look like a real base. Just rotating needed. Okay, done. And let's select this and give them a bit of random rotation and displacement. And because these are natural kits, they fit together very well. So bring this one down to here. Okay, it works all right. And now let's select all of them, isolate them, and deselect this, and join all of them together. And take the name from this, and we need to take the pivot from this one as well. So let's select this, bring the world origin to selected, and bring the pivot to cursor. So now these two share the same pivot. Let's bring the cursor back to its own original place. And now delete this one, and I'm going to rename this to what we had before. Okay, this one is done. Let's export it into Unreal and see what we have created. So we select it. This one is also near 1 million polygons. Let's export and let's find it in here. It's here, and let's first convert it into nanite. And the reason that I'm converting these into nanite before creating them is when we create and import these without converting them to nanite, we get a performance hit because these are going to be heavy meshes, and having a lot of instances from these meshes will get a bit of performance hit. So I'm going to convert it first to nanite and then re-import them. So let's hit re-import and done. We place this, let me see them here. We place this, and you see, instead of those really CG lines here, we have something a bit more beautiful to look at, and it's looking more natural. And then what we need to do is creating this 4x4 and 6x6 pieces, and then later on create the fencing system. And it's easy to create. And of course, we're going to do something to prevent this obvious tiling that we see in here. For example, taking this and rotate it 180 degrees, and because this you are using metric system, it's going to be placed right where it needs to be. For example, this one broke the tiling in here. Let's look at it. It just needs a bit of displacing so that it works. Okay, you see it has completely broken the tiling in here. Later on we're going to make these better also, but first let's create the kits, and then later on we'll take care of the repetitions. Okay, here we are, and I'm going to select these kits and these ones as well. And now we're going to create these the same way we created the blockout. We're going to utilize this one and copy it to create the variation for this. So let's bring this one in here. So I'm going to select all of these and bring them in here. Okay, now these are in place. I'm going to select these ones. I mean selecting everything but these pillars. So let's select everything and deselect these pillars. Okay, let's inspect it and we're good to go. And I'm going to duplicate this around. And bring them in here. And let's look at it in isolation view. It's good somehow, but we need to place a pillar in here to fill this gap in between. So let's select this one, and I'm going to bring this over in here and only select the name of it. And use some of these ones. I'm going to use this to cover here. Okay, make this bigger. And bring it to cover this area. We could also invest more time to create a more unique piece, but we're using what we have created over and over again to create new identities. And this reusability really helps in creating and being creative. So let's copy this upside down and select these, and we need to join them, and then join them in here. So we have this piece in here. And now what we're going to do is first exploding this one by selecting it and going into edit view, and you simply need to hit P and by loose parts. And now it explodes the mesh that we have into its own creating meshes. So I'm going to select these, only selecting these horizontal ones. Okay, and now I'm going to use the original of each individual one to rotate them, to give them variation. So let's give it individual ones. And because the pivot of all of these ones, as you remember, we placed the pivot in here, it's not working. So I need to press Alt and S to make the pivots localized to them. And now using individual origins, rotate them. So now it's giving us a bit of butterfly effect, which we don't want. You see these ones being symmetrical to each other. So I'm going to make this a bit more localized by rotating, offsetting, and duplicating them around to create a new identity. So let's select this one as well. And I can also, for example, bring this one down and replace it with another mesh. It's perfectly fine. And give this some terracing effect like terraces that you see here. So this one I'm going to select it and try to give it as much variation as you need and as you can. For example, I can take this one, rotate it like this, and gone. We created basically a new thing. And let's take this one because this is too obvious and bring it in here. So this one as well. I'm happy with this part in here. So I'm going to delete this part. Of course, I'm going to keep this one because, let me see, we have a duplicate piece in here. So there's not a problem, we can fix that. Okay, I deleted that. So I'm going to delete all of these instead because I'm going to place them in here, and I'm going to deselect this one so that I know where I'm going to place my kit. So let's select all of them, and I'm going to use this one as a guide to know where to place my kit. So I'm going to place them here and delete this because I do not need it. And let's take all of them and exclude these pillars. Because I'm going to rotate them and give them rotation, I do not need to rotate this. Let me see what I have selected. So this one I need to deselect it as well. Okay, this one is fine. And now let's go in here and try to rotate them using individual origins. But before that, I need to hold down Alt and S. Of course, this Alt and S belongs to this MagSafe's interactive tool, which I have installed. It by default, it's not working. If you want it to work, you need to install it and assign a shortcut into Quick Pivot. Okay, let's hit Alt and S. And now let's deselect these ones and give these a rotation and Alt and S on these as well. To make this unique. And now we have uniqueness in every site that we see here. So let's compare them to each other. And I can take individual ones, for example, like this, and rotate them to get new variations. And you can displace them, for example, to get a new thing as well. So now that I'm looking at this, it's the repetition of the same thing. I'm going to rotate them upside down to get a new variations. Okay, something like this. Or let me make this a straight like this. And I'm comparing these against this. It's all right. But I need to rotate this and make it unique and rescale it so that it's not so identical to this one. So I'm happy with this. Let's select all of them and select this one as the last object and join them together. And because this is sharing the same pivot as that, we are good to go. Let me undo the movements, and these two are sharing the same pivot because we have set them to be. So let's take this one, take the name from it, and rename it. Of course, we need to first delete this one and remove this from the name, and then export it to see what we have created. Okay, let's take this and give it export to test it inside Unreal using BatX and export. So here we are in Unreal, and let's select this 6x6 piece and convert it into Nanite, save it, and then re-import it. Okay, here we are, and re-imported that, and we have created this kit perfectly. And this 6x6 piece has been placed on the areas which we have used it, which is these ones, of course. And the thing that we're creating has been hidden under here, but that is not a problem. You have a kit and you can place it and create new things with it. So for the last one, I'm going to create this 4x4 piece, and this is going to be the last one from protectors, and then later on we create this fencing system, and it's going to be the easiest one and the fastest one to create. So Blender. So this is the last one. I'm going to bring this in here and bring this one in here as well. So we need to select these ones all, and first thing I'm going to select all of them and bring them in here so that it's 4x4. And then we need to see where the border is on this one, and looks like we need to bring this to the right even more. Just a bit. Okay, And now the borders of that is in here, and we need to select them and delete whatever we have until here. So select length and delete them. Okay, deleted. And now we need to select these. Only select one. I mean one polygon from each. And select from this side as well. I'm only going to select one polygon and then select length so that all of them become selected. Okay, now select length. And I'm going to scale them in this direction to make them cover the whole. And now let's look at it in isolation view to see what is going on here. And it's obvious that this is identical to the previous one. So I'm going to again explode it. P loose parts. And for this pillar, I'm going to select all of these and delete them. Okay. And this is the one that is remaining. Yeah, it's from the kit. And I'm going to bring this for the pillar. Bring it into the center. And it's too thick. Let's make it a bit thinner. And okay, it's good. And now let's bring this down, rotate it. Again, bring this down, rotate it in here, and then rotate it in here to give it a bit of more variation as well. So let's take this one in here, and we want to place it here as well. So let's rotate, and we're getting basically the new thing. And now we don't need this one to be here because it's a small piece and we do not need to have so many pillars. So now what we're going to do is giving these bit of detailing. So let's select all of them, give them individual pivots and bring them in here, or we can rotate them in their own direction and then go to pivot and set it to be bounding center and displace them like this as well to give them more detail and more separation from the previous one that we created. So let's inspect it from all sides. I need to select all of them but this one and give them all individual rotation to make it more unique. And also some displacement is needed as well to make it not so like that previous one. So let's take these, and then after that I'm going to disable the individual origins and go to bounding box center and create a new one. It looks like this new one needs some rotation as well and some displacement as well. For example, bring this here, rotate it. We only need to create some rotations and basic movements to create a new identity. And suppose that you had to create this entirely in ZBrush without using these kits. It would have taken forever to create these kits. So this one is okay, alright. Select this. I'm going to delete this mannequin, I do not need it. Okay, and now select this one as the last. Control and J. And this is now a single entity. But of course, first I need to bring this over. And now select all of them and join them. So bring this one in here. And looks like I have offsetted the pivot on this one, which we don't want. I have set the pivot to be in here, which I really don't want. So I brought this back from the backup files that I had. This is the same one, but with the correct pivot. So bring it into the place and world to selected and pivot to cursor and set origin back to its place. Now they are sharing the same pivot. So let's select this, copy the name and delete this one because I do not need it. And place the name in here, delete the rest of it and hit export. And let's select this, which is this 4x4 piece first, convert it into nanite, save, and re-import. And if you encounter to crash Unreal Engine when you're exporting and converting the mesh into nanite, open a simple scene and then convert that into nanite there, because the scene that we had there is going to take a lot of performance and it may crash sometimes. So if you happen to crash when creating nanite meshes, open a simple scene and then after that import your nanite meshes and then import your open your scene. Okay, it imported, and now it's obvious that we need to bring the height of these down a bit, because when I'm comparing to these ones are so high, and if I want to bring this fencing system, it's not going to be obvious. So I brought this piece in here as a guide, and now I'm going to select this and bring this down to match the height of this one. Something like here. And now I need to offset the pivot to here. So again, as always, pivot to selected and pivot to cursor. And let's offset the pivot to its place. And now I'm going to export this and re-import it into Unreal. So take this and open it in static mesh editor and hit re-import. Okay, it offsetted the height and now it's matching what we have here. And it's perfect. So this is about this fencing system creation. We created that. Let's go to detail lighting mode to see what we have created. You see a lot of those CG lines are gone now. And now one thing that is remaining is replacing this fencing system. And it's easiest one to do. So we have these only remaining and they are pretty easy to do. So let me delete this. And one by one I bring them here and I start to kit bash them like we were doing before. And I'm going to use these three to kit bash this because I believe this will fit perfect. So for the pillars in here, I'm going to take this and of course bring it to the top. Okay, and for other ones, let's take this as well and replace it with this. And these ones do a pretty good job in hiding the seams that we have on these kits. So let's use this one for here as well. And this is not a time consuming process because it's a bit easier to do than the rest of those. It's only kit bashing. So we are good to go. So bring this here and try to break every CG line you see in here. I'm always telling you to always break every CG line you see and replace it with something natural. So this is one, and let's take these two as well and bring them here. Okay, and now rotate them in this direction and replace them with these. Okay, this is good. And now let's take these three, excluding the blockout, and bring them in here. Replace them with these kits as well. But since these are so repetitive, I'm going to make some adjustments to this. For example, bring this up, bring this down, and some maneuvers to make them look like not so repetitive at all. So this one needs a bit of rotation. And let's hide this to see this only. And this is good. I'm happy with it. Yeah, it's looking alright. And let's rotate this 90 degrees to make it unique as well. Or we can offset it a bit. And we can take these, for example, and rotate them to make them not so like each other. So this is the first one. Let me unhide the previous one to see what the name should be. And it's the fencing corner number 4. So let's take the name from it and isolate these. And let's take all of them, excluding the blockout, and join them. So again, let's bring the world center to this one and pivot of this one to selected. Okay, the pivot is done, and now I can safely remove this and rename this to corner. Okay, and export it. So this is about it. And let's bring this one out and bring this one in. This one is a smaller one indeed, and I'm going to use some smaller kits for this. So let's bring this here, bring this one down a bit, and I'm going to use a smaller planks for this. For example, this one's. Let me see if I can replace it. Yeah, it works perfectly. But of course, this one, let's make the pivot. All right, I need to shrink this one in this size so that it works better with this kit. So copy it to top and bring them in here. And now what I'm going to do is selecting all of these and give them a bit of rotation to make them not so like each other. For example, rotating them, offsetting them, and do all kinds of things that you know. So this is about it. And let's rotate this one as well. Okay, this is it. Let's select all of them, join them, and now as always I'm going to borrow the naming from this. So let's get the name, and I'm going to get the pivot from that. So let's take this one, offset the origin to selected as always, and select this one and offset the pivot to origin. So this one is about it as well. And now let's make this alright to see if the pivot system works. Yeah, the pivot system works, and now I'm only going to take the name of this one and delete it and replace the name with this, and we are ready perfectly to export this as well. And because this is a relatively cheap mesh, it really didn't take so much time to export this. So these are 2 and only 4 remaining. So the process is the same. I'm going to bring this in here, and of course you should note that the pivot is been placed in here. So let's grab this instead and bring it right in here, but this one is looking too big, and I'm going to replace it with this and pick these 3 and bring them in here. So that's not too complicated. I'm only going to place these 3 in here and make them a bit smaller to be a lot more perfect in terms of matching the size in here. And because we place a pillar in the starting of every one, you see this one has a pillar, this one has a pillar, and whenever we try to match them to each other, the pillar is going to cover all of the seams. For example, if we are going to repeat these 2 after each other, let me bring this one, and something like this happens. This pillar is going to cover the seams, and it's going to be seamless all across. And that is because we placed always the pivot in the place of the pillar, so that every time we do something, the pillar is going to cover the seams for us. So let's take the name of this one, and it's look like we're done with it. Let's offset this just a bit and select them all and join them, and again offset the pivot to selected, offset the world origin, and now select this one and offset the pivot to cursor. And this one is the cursor, and when we place it in here in 000, it's called cursor at the world origin. So let's make that right, cursor to world origin, and select this one and bring it here. Okay, we need the export. Let me take the name from this and delete it and replace the name in here and select export. So just 3 remaining. This one is relatively an easy one to do. Again, I'm only going to use this, and again bring these 3 in here, and of course I'm going to resize them to match the size and proportions in here. So this is it, this one for this one and this one on this, and as always try to give them as much rotation and basically random list that you can. And now again, I'm going to take the naming, and this naming and material and pivot is very important so that it imports into Unreal Engine flawlessly without any problem actually. So select these and join them, pivot to selected, world origin to selected. No, let's select this one. World origin to selected and the pivot to cursor. Okay, this one is done also, and we're only left with a couple of ones. So let me remove the translations on this one, and this is working perfectly. And now delete this one and only rename this and export. So bring this one in here as well, and we have left only this one. Let's bring this. Of course, it needs a bit of resize, so it doesn't matter if this is too big. This is going to be hidden under the surface, and Nexttut is going to occlude this for us and remove it from the calculations, and that is a perfect thing that Nexttut does. So I'm going to take these and bring them here. Make this bigger. Okay, and resize it from here. Make this bigger as well. So let's isolate this to hide any barriers. And we are left with this piece, which we are going to use this one. Let's resize this and this as well. And again, as always, join these together. Copy the name of this one. Bring the pivot, bring the world origin to pivot of the selected, and offset the pivot to the selected as well. So let's delete this one and paste the name in here and hit export. And we're left with only single one, and this is the last of them. So let's make the pivot all right, and the pivot is here, and it's doing great. So the last one, hopefully, and finally we are finishing the dog kit in here after a lot of work that we did and a lot of lessons that we learned from creating this kit. And again, as always, bring some of these to create this. So I'm going to use these three again, rotate, and displace them to create what we want. And I feel like I could make these in here smaller just a bit to match the proportions better. Yeah, someone like this. And bring them in here as well. So let's match it. Yeah, perfect. So let's take this one, and of course I can take this and bring it down. So take this one, take the name, and I'm going to join them all together but this one. So join, it needs a last object to join. So select this one. Let me select. So they didn't join properly, so I joined them together. So I have the name of this one, and I'm going to take the pivot from that also. So pivot to selected, and pivot to cursor. Okay, done. And now I can delete this and rename this and hit export. And we have now finally created all of the basic kits that we have here. Of course, later on, if we needed to create a variation, we will do that. But for now, let's import this into Unreal Engine to see what we have created so far. So in Unreal, I'm using this empty scene to remove any unnecessary burden out of this. And I'm going to select all of these and right click and convert them into Nanite. So we need to save them and re-import them one by one. And of course, the material needs to be resetted. So re-import, the process is so fast because these meshes are relatively cheap and small, and they really do not take any extra time to import. So import again, and this is the last one, and looks like all of them have been manipulated. And to make sure, let's go and yeah, you see this, it has been changed. And now let's open the scene, this one that we created, and check this. It's going to take a bit to calculate, and the pivot on some of them is wrong. The pivot is alright, the rotation of these is wrong. We need to, for example, rotate them 90 degrees to get what we want. And this is because we have offsetted the pivot or the mesh in Blender. So it happens sometime, and this is good that we know that it happens sometime. And let's go in Blender and try to fix this. So here we are in one of the older versions of this scene that I have used, and I didn't delete it. So I hit Control C and take these and open the latest version of the scene, which is this. So let's hit Control V, and we have perfectly imported into this. So let me select these two and re-import them on each other. This is good. And select these two as well. And this is doing alright. So let's bring these over, select these two. And this is doing great. These. And this is going alright as well. Select these two, and these two are doing good as well. And these are the last ones. So the problem was with rotating stuff. Some of them were rotated 90 degrees. So let's select all of them, and instead of, if you drag this out and hit Alt and G, it's going to bring this into the center of the world and reset its location. You see in here, clear location, excuse me. And if I hit Alt and R, it's going to clear every rotation data that we have in here. So this one is good. Let me test on this. Let's hit Alt and R on this to see, yeah, this one, the rotation hasn't been done yet. So I hit Control and A and apply the rotation as well. So let's export this and test on the others to see if they are ready or not. So the rotation on this needs to be fixed as well. Apply the rotation, and I'm not going to do any apply all in here because it applies all of them, including the pivot, which I don't want. I really want the pivot to stay in the same place. So this one as well, let's hit Alt and R. Yeah, it applies the rotation. Let's apply the rotation as well and hit export. And export this one as well. And let's bring these two out. Alt and R. Yeah, this one is rotating 90 degrees as well. Let's apply the rotation, and if we apply the rotation, it tells the Blender to make this the default rotation value. So we have applied the rotation and it exports. And this is the last one. Let's hit Alt and R. Yeah, this one, it needs rotation as well. So hit export, and now we go to Unreal Engine and hit re-import to see if they be fixed or not. Okay, here we are in Unreal, and let's select this, hit re-import. This one was good, I believe, and let's re-import all of them. So for some reason it's not doing that. So let's take these and start to offset them manually. So I'm going to select this and hit export, and in here let's hit re-import, and these have been fixed. This one is fixed for now. Looks like we need to do a bit of manual rotation on some of them, and let's find which ones are problematic to solve them. So this one is okay. This one, which is corner 2 meters, is okay. This one needs to be fixed, and that is it. So let's bring this, rotate this 90 degrees and hit export and re-import again into Unreal. Yeah, this one is fixed also, but we can bring it to the top as well if you want, but if you don't want, really, you can stick with this. So this one also, this one is this, rotate it 90 degrees and export. Just a bit of manual touch-ups. Okay, and let's see which ones are problematic still. It looks like they have been fixed, except for this one, which the pivot needs to come up just a bit. So this is it. This is the 3 meters piece. So I'm going to go into mesh edit mode and select here and apply the pivot on this area. Instead of that, I'm placing the pivot in the center. So let's export again, and in here I need to re-import this so that it brings it up just a bit. So this one's done as well. And now that I'm looking at these, all of them have been fixed for now. So I'm pretty happy with the result that we are getting so far. Let's go to lit mode, and yeah, I'm happy with how the duck is looking. And now hit resave on all of them, Control Alt and S to create a new map, a new version I mean. And then in the next chapter we bring this port to a new level. So see you there.